All right, hi, I'm Aditya Mittal, and this is a case study on Away's organizational culture. Away is a startup, and here is my identification for the case study uh, for the Quantic School of Business. And so, Away is portrayed as a cool travel brand, not just a luggage or not just another bag brand, although they were just building a bag, but their idea was to focus on the entire customer journey, starting from how the Jen Rubio, who's one of their founders, her bag, she listed on social media or made a post that her bag broke down during her travel, and then Steph Corey reached out to Jen Rubio, and they started a company together where they would focus on the bag being the best for travel, would not break down, the zipper or should not break down. The bag had a hardcore shell. If a customer needed to easily access their clothing or their shoes on a plane, the bag is compartmentalized to allow easy access for the different parts. If TSA wants to, at one point, TSA tried to discard the bags because there was batteries and they were not allowed on the plane in the security check. And so Jen and Steph quickly released a feature in the bag where the battery could be taken out of the bag and could go through the security process. And so it was a very dynamic, very customer focused, customer centric company with the idea that we're not just luggage, but another travel, a big travel brand. And future plans to go beyond just the bag to be becoming something more for travelers with things like access to travel questions, responding to every email of travelers that comes through, figuring out ways to help travelers along the way find new destinations. In future, they had plans to also sell other products related to travel, such as apparel and so on. So the question we're going to try to answer here is what went wrong with Away's organizational culture, and how did the corporate philosophy and the organizational culture become misaligned? And later in the story, when Steph Corey was fired or no longer with the company as the CEO, the HR policies and leadership style changes by Jen Rubio, are they likely to realign the organizational culture and the corporate philosophy at Away? So that is the premise, and let's get into it. So the first thing is that clearly the mission and the organizational culture were misaligned at Away. The employees were mostly youngsters who were attracted to Away because of the smokescreen that was put up about celebrities and coolness and lifestyles of inclusion and nice vacations. Jen Rubio would always be traveling everywhere and speaking, and youngsters would see that and say, hey, I want to go work at that company. That's a really cool startup. And then internally, Steph Corey was the CEO that was managing all of uh, the organization. And she's a very data driven person, very customer focused, and as a culture of two women founders, not necessarily tech, but selling a bag, but trying to portray it as a big travel tech kind of company. They were running it as a globally minded business. So these are all things. There's a very big article in The Verge by Zoe Schiffer. There's so much in there. We don't have time to go over everything, but I encourage you to read the article from The Verge. And what happened is this cool exec team, led by Steph Corey, was really bullying these workers, the youngsters, into delivering a great brand for the customers, but they were yelling at the workers, reprimanding them, bullying them with, cursing at them, making them work long hours. People were typically getting off past 9 p.m. Steph Corey was working till 1 in the morning, sending out emails, If even a single email would be missed, she would be yelling at people. There was a very cutthroat culture that allowed the company to grow at hyperspeed from zero to $1.4 billion valuation in just about 4 to 5 years. And there was a big cult following with celebrities and millennials like Carly Kloss and Ashton Kutcher and Rashida Jones and so on, to promote these bags on social media. And out from the outside, it looked like, this amazing big company with all these celebs and cool culture and so on. But internally, these youngsters who were a little bit insecure, and weren't so cool, were feeling as if, it's a cult brand and they're being sucked into the cool factor and being manipulated, so that outside they can go and be like, yeah, I work for this great brand called Away. But, on the inside, they're constantly under pressure. It's like a pressure cooker, basically, or, what we might call a sweatshop. So this kind of misaligned culture happened where it looked great from the outside, really bad culture on the inside. And there's mentions in the Verge article about how this Slack channels were being used. They were not allowed to use email to talk to each other, and they were constantly monitored, and basically things that should be private between two people were pretty much exposed internally. So it's like all the employees can see everything. And there was a something about authentic leadership where, leaders exhibit the same behaviors and things that they expect from the employees. But this was not the case, because Jen Rubio and Steph Curry would secretively be able to talk to each other about things and what they're trying to do and not necessarily be so transparent. But everybody else in the organization was expected to be super transparent, and sometimes any mistakes would be reprimanded publicly over the Slack channels, such as, somebody made a mistake with writing the name in a personalized bag, where they write the name in gold for the customer, and so that person was reprimanded publicly and so on. And Steph Curry basically called this corporate philosophy as, you guys are empowered to serve the customer and be customer obsessed, and we're all one team and so on. But really, it was a form of micromanagement, of bullying, and so on internally. And so here I have some more about the bully CEO. The things she would say is things like a bunch of millennial twats, this person is brain dead, or, if empowerment just means we give away more free stuff, we could give away 10 bags or 100 bags and so on. Steph Curry, who's the CEO, she often vacillated between being funny and relatable to hypercritical and even cruel, is what employees say. She would swear at them during interviews. She would cackle at people's jokes and so on. And she was kind of a rich person to begin with. She went to boarding school, landed in Bloomingdale's executive development program at Brown University. She later did her MBA. She grew up in a 55,000 square foot historic mansion with an indoor swimming pool and 3 dining rooms and so on. And she did work very hard, and she had a great work ethic and so on, but she really pushed people to an extreme, creating kind of a negative culture. Now, this kind of pushing is known at other large companies as well, whether it's Elon Musk's Tesla or X, or Amazon with Jeff Bezos, or Netflix. And there's some arguments around why is this such a big issue for a female-led company versus these male-led companies. Possibly because there are more HR complaints and things with the females, as opposed to men who are just kind of go in expecting this kind of things and put up with it. So there are some broader discussions around that, and those can be pretty large discussions in what happens in the tech industry, gender issues, and so on. So here is a YouTube kind of video with Steph Curry and Jen Rubio. Here, Jen Rubio is the artsy, creative, emotional side of the team, and Steph Curry is the analytical, methodical, and logical side of the team. So they call themselves as the two halves of the brain. And basically, like I mentioned, Steph Curry runs the internal, and Rubio runs the sorry.
You were telling me your sons are
Yes.
all about Away.
So can you do an ad for Away?
No.
Away
Yeah.
is
What do they like about it? It would be a response.
We would be like the most well-run, like process-driven, on top of every number business with 0 customers.
Okay, all right, okay.
She's the CEO, so she's the boss.
Okay.
So she's the CEO, she's the boss.
And we think about it, we're building two things here. We're building a brand and we're building a company.
Mm-hmm.
Both need each other to be
A fear of failure, like
And here's a
I'm
little
so
bit
scared
more
of.
about what Steph has to
So,
say about
that helps.
culture.
What about you?
I think for me, so much of what has led to our success up to now has been we've created like a really unique culture within the company around lack of fear of failure, like comfort with risk taking, like true one team mentality. There's just like a lot of things that are really unique that when people come in, they're like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this. And that gets harder and harder to maintain as you get bigger. So if there's one thing I'm very focused on every day, it's as the business grows and the team grows, how do we like really institutionalize this stuff? The customer feedback loop, like that can't get lost anywhere, whether we're 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, like that's got to be really tight because that's what gets us where we're going. So those are the things that I think a lot about.
So as you heard her, she's very hyper-focused on customer culture, whether how many of her people there are. She doesn't want to miss a thing. She wants everything 100%. She puts a lot of pressure on the employees for it and keeps track of all of that. Jen also feels like Steph is the CEO and the boss and so on. So basically the left brain, Steph, is greater than the right brain, Jen, in this relationship. Steph even calls Jen her work wife at some point, which is mentioned, I believe, in the Verge article as well. So, as you heard from these founders, this is the kind of culture coming out in talks a little bit as well. So, moving on. So what's really going wrong with the culture? They lack corporate values that clearly relate what org culture should be like with the mission. Mission is to make everything travel friendly and so on, but internally they haven't really set those values for their own employees. There's a customer only focus rather than a stakeholder focus. Employees are also a stakeholder of the company, not just the customers. There's too much micromanagement and too much oversight. There's a lack of work-life balance. And in terms of leadership, there's no servant leadership at all clearly here. There is no authentic leadership, as we saw with the privacy aspect, for example. The founders can talk privately, but the rest of them have their pants down and can't talk privately. And there's also a lack of business ethics and responsibility. The ladies were often made to work throughout their vacation times, throughout their Christmas and New Year's, with a promise of potentially having another month later as time off. And they were portrayed as choices, but they really were not choices. People were just kind of forced to work in their vacation. And these could have been legal lawsuits potentially. And so there is eventually Steph Curry had to go, and Rubio took over as the CEO as an interim CEO after one other CEO in between, who also resigned. So now Rubio introduced things like regular check-ins, feedbacks, gender-neutral parent leave policy, company-wide wellness days, paid time off program for religious holidays, and so on. So I think at the surface, Rubio did try to fix some of the common problems which were happening, but philosophically and values and culture of the company potentially hasn't fully changed. Will it eventually change? Maybe, but there's too much of it already. And so I personally think that there's a lot more that can be done to align that mission to the culture for all stakeholders rather than remaining overly customer focused for this company. Because of COVID, the sales did drop 90%, and so maybe they learned a few lessons from that as well. I already spoke about a little bit about female leadership, impact of toxic culture on females and females in tech. This is a much broader discussion and not really scope of the presentation, but I want to leave this with potential thoughts about how having a gender balance in the workforce could impact culture in positive ways. And here are some references with Away Travel and the YouTube video and how Jen Rubio went off and started the billion-dollar company and gave an interview to The Inc. and Zoe Schiffer's Verge expose as well. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.